Hi, Neal Gittleman here, Artistic Director and Conductor of your Dayton Philharmonic Orchestra. You're about to see a short conversation that my colleagues Karen Russo Burke and Tom Bankston and I recently had about our summer stream replay of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Karen was sitting on a porch in western Pennsylvania on her phone and maybe with a slightly iffy internet connection, so her video freezes up every once in a while and her audio is sometimes a little on the crunchy side. I was on my laptop, which has a somewhat grainy and artistic looking camera to it, and Tom Bankston looked and sounded fabulous. So despite these little technological quirks, I hope you'll find our conversation as interesting to observe as it was to have. I'm here with my colleagues, Karen Russo Burke, Artistic Director of Dayton Ballet, and Tom Bankston, Artistic Director of Dayton Opera. And we are here to just chat amongst ourselves a little bit about our replay stream of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So Tom and Karen, nice to see you. Karen looks like she's comfortably outside, and Tom's in his study as always. I thought maybe we could start with each of us sharing a little bit of our own personal perspective on this Beethoven's Ninth Symphony project from our season opening spectacular of 2016, because we are representing three different disciplines who came together in this one project. And it's a piece of music which I think addresses and approaches each of our disciplines in a slightly different way. Karen, you want to go first?
Sure. I had never really heard the Beethoven's Ninth all the way through, and so I was really appreciative of the sections that you and Tom had pointed out. Two of the standout sections, of course, was the Ode to Joy, and it's so soft that I thought, oh, of course, the female section, but I think it was one of you two that had suggested maybe it being an all-male section. And that was a quite nice mix. I didn't intend it to be an all-male section, but I just loved how it built. Something that repeats itself over and over again is always hard because you don't know whether to stay with the same combination that you stayed with or just, when it should finish. So it just kept overlapping, and then we built it from being on the floor to being off the floor. So the same vocabulary, but building as the music built. And the other section that I loved, and I think Neal, correct me, is the second section. That's the very structured dum ba da 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 dum bum bum. I love the structure of that, but what I didn't realize is the beautiful lyrical middle piece of that. And we didn't have enough time to go ahead and choreograph that. And so what I did was went back into the studio and used that music, the two end pieces, but I filled in the middle piece that we weren't able to dance to. It was so beautiful. The dichotomy is so beautiful. I just loved it.
It worked out nicely in the sense that in the more physical and aggressive sections of the music, the dancers were engaged, and that was, of course, the first time that the audience had a chance to see the dancers, and that left the orchestra to shine in the lyrical trio section. But it would have been lovely to have contrasting choreography there as well. But I thought what you did with it was just wonderful in every respect.
Oh, thank you. I just love, the more and more I see it now when we were working to piece it together, that music will stay with me now for a very long time.
And Tom, as you served as our producing director for this production, so as the theatrical person, it was kind of your responsibility to figure out how to take this iconic concert piece and turn it into a piece for the stage. How'd you do that?
Right. This was the sixth of these season opening spectaculars that we had done. And with the year before that, this one, we had done a whole work, the Verdi Requiem, and the Beethoven certainly provided plenty in terms of evocative imagery that we used. We didn't try to create a storyline as such or anything like that, and to put that on top of the work, but more just trying to establish moods with imagery and things that were strong backdrops for the choreography that Karen did, and so it was a great project to and I don't know that we were the only ones who have ever done that, but not very many people have set this piece in that way, and I think that probably some of our public was a little bit skeptical of the whole thing. Their Beethoven Ninth, how dare you put dancers and sort of dramatize it, but I'm a longtime patron of the Philharmonic and friend of mine said to me, I was pretty skeptical about this whole thing, but he said, wow, I mean, it had a really strong effect, I think.
I personally thought, why not? I mean, we do Beethoven's Ninth as a concert piece all the time, gazillions of times. And why not rethink it and come at it in a dramatic way? The music is certainly dramatic. It has a dramatic arc to it. And why not give that 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions even by adding the theatrical elements and the choreographic elements. And if people don't like it, well, the next time we do Beethoven's Ninth, it'll be a concert again. But I came away from it thinking, geez, I don't know if I want to ever do this piece as a concert piece again. It's so much more deep in its effect on the audience and its effect on the performers when you do it as more than just a concert piece.
And actually, we sort of established it in a sort of the regular way. I mean, with in the first movement was done with no dance and of course there are no singers involved in that, and it was more focused on the orchestra, and then with that the second movement with the scherzo, it started to add the dance into it, and the dance was there, basically through the remainder of the piece, but we allowed for that first movement to be a focus on the orchestra and big images of you conducting that orchestra, Neal.
Which I had to make sure not to look at, because it's very, very disconcerting to see yourself as the great and mighty Oz above you. The other thing I think is that if you transport yourself back to 1824 when the piece was played, the first 3 movements of the symphony are bigger in scale than a lot of other pieces of the time, but it's perfectly normal and expectable. And then things start to get weird at the beginning of the last movement, but then really it's like he blows the roof off of the whole idea of what a symphony is supposed to be, because a symphony is not supposed to have singers. It's not supposed to have somebody standing up and the first words out of his mouth are, "Oh, friends, not this music. Let's hear something more joyful." I mean, it was almost like a slap in the face to all of the traditions of concert music. So personally, I think Beethoven would love the idea that we blew it up from being just a concert piece or just the Beethoven's Ninth we all grew up with and turned it into something more, because that's what he was doing with the piece itself. He was saying a symphony shouldn't be what it's been, for these last 100 or 150 years. It has so much more than it can say, but it can't say it unless you bring the human voice into it and unless you bring poetry into it. And we just piled on top of that and said, well, unless you bring dance into it and projections and the theatrical approach to the staging. So I would like to think that Beethoven would have liked what we did.
I was curious to see the symphonies after that one. Did he follow that frame of mind?
Well, that was the last one.
That was the last one.
He started work on a 10th symphony. In fact, my understanding of the story is that the whole idea of the Ode to Joy section, the set of variations on with chorus and singers setting the poem of Schiller's, we always call it the Ode to Joy, and Schiller's poem is simply called To Joy, and it's an ode. So even though I use that figuration, every time I use it, part of me says, no, it's not the Ode to Joy, it's just To Joy, and it's an ode. But everything that I've read says that actually Beethoven had this idea of having a symphonic finale, which would be a setting of Schiller's ode, but it was going to be the finale of his 10th symphony. It wasn't going to be in the 9th symphony. And then for some reason, he decided just to do it now, and that would be the finale. But it caused a problem because musically, at least in Beethoven's mind, musically, what he was going to do with the Schiller poem was different from what he had done in the first 4 movements. And he had to figure out a way, well, how do I get from this first idea of what the 9th symphony was going to be to this new idea of adding the finale of the 10th symphony? And that's where he came up with that strange introduction to the 4th movement, where you hear this stormy music and there's a flashback to the first movement and a flashback to the second and a flashback to the third. It strikes us now as a very sort of dramatic and almost cinematic approach to the music. But in Beethoven's mind, it was just practical. It's like, I can't relate this to the other movements. Oh, I'll just quote something from the third movements and put this kind of crazy introduction, and that will somehow make it fit with the rest of the piece. And, I think it was what, in modern technology, they would call a kludge, a sort of awkward thing that you do just to make things work. And now we look back at it as one of these just brilliant creative insights. Karen, I had one other specific question for you, and it was just something that I'm curious about. So think of a piece like Nutcracker or Swan Lake or Sleeping Beauty or Romeo and Juliet, where the music was conceived of from the very beginning as being for dancing. Is there a difference when you start figuring out how to choreograph to a piece of music? Is it different for you if it's music like that, which was custom made from the very beginning for dancing, versus something like the Beethoven's Ninth, where he wasn't thinking of dancing when he wrote it? Is there anything intrinsic about the non-dance music that makes it different when you approach it as a choreographer?
Yeah, I mean, you write your own libretto when there isn't a story attached to the music, and that's very freeing. And like Tom said, we didn't have any intentional story on top of it, which was really kind of nice. It's actually hard too, because as much as people think you just hear a pretty piece of music and you put steps to it, there always has to be an underlying, or at least for me, an underlying thought, idea, something that I want to say. So there has to be something that pushes the creative aspect of it, and that's very freeing. It's harder for me, but it also pushes you as an artist, I think.
Going back to the wonderful words of Friedrich Schiller, it certainly is. I mean, and it's so poignant that we're bringing this piece back to our public at this particular time. Though the words of the To Joy movement of the Ninth is so appropriate for the time that we're in right now. And I mean, the bit of the text that we printed at the beginning of the performance of the ninth sort of sums it all up, I believe. And I won't repeat that right now, but hope our public reads those words and takes them to heart.
Right, because I mean, Schiller was talking about, and Beethoven was talking about this notion of universal brotherhood, of all people being one. And his belief, I think, in setting the text was that the way we get to that image of brotherhood and that time when we are all one and not divided is by embracing joy. That joy is the thing which makes us all most human. And when we are most joyous, that's when we can come together. So it's nice that we came together, our disciplines, through this piece.
Right.
The whole experience was just wonderful. I mean, I love the collaborations that we do together, but this one I think was special because it was so far out from what you normally think of as what would you do in a theatrical, choreographic, musical collaboration. And it turned out so well that it was wonderful to do. It was very rewarding. And it just makes me think, well, you know, when we can finally get back together and do stuff like this again, I would love to explore other seemingly off the wall ideas and figure out what other kinds of really cool things we can do together.
Yeah.
Yes.